Rabbi Abe Friedman is a community and law enforcement chaplain. He has worked with Agudath Israel of America when we did the massive Siyum Hashas event, 90,000 people converging on MetLife Stadium, coordinated with many law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and the New Jersey State Police, and continues to work closely with the law enforcement community on behalf of our community. Rabbi Friedman, please join me here at the podium.
Thank you, Rabbi Tzvibel. Good morning. I'm very honored to be here, and I want to echo the previous guest speakers to thank Agudath Israel. I had the honor of working with you and for your noble work on behalf of the community for so many years. To our next guest speaker and very important person that I came to deal with on many occasions for the past few years. I would like to share with you first at a meeting what we had with previous director of the FBI, Robert Mueller, before he retired after years of with the Bureau. I asked him, what was your most memorable experience at the FBI? And he shared with me the phone call that he had a day after 9/11 from President Bush, who asked him to come into his office and said to him, Director Mueller, I need you to change the direction of the FBI. From being a bureau that fights criminality, I need you to change it to protect the United States from terror. And I think it's so important for us to understand the FBI, the Bureau has units and agents that each and every day, especially by us in the community, that we are able to continue to do our freedom, religious freedom, and I want to thank him and on behalf of the FBI and all the great work they have done to protect our community. So, to the Richard M. Frankel. I'm just going to read his bio, and I'm sure you can see what this man is all about and his career with the FBI. Richard M. Frankel was named the Associate Director of the National Intelligence Office of Director Intelligence in August of 2011 by FBI Director Robert Mueller. Mr. Frankel served as Assistant Special Agent in charge of the New York's Office Counter-terrorism Division. While in that position, he oversaw numerous counterterrorism investigations within New York City and the metropolitan area. He also overlooked the case to include the bomb plot in 2 synagogues in the Bronx and shoot a military plane out of the air near Stewart Airport Force Base. The plot to explode a bomb in New York City subway system and the attempt to explode a vehicle bomb in Times Square. Mr. Frankel has traveled extensively for the FBI. He served as the FBI Deputy On-Scene Commander in Afghanistan, where he led the group of the FBI personnel who supported the U.S. forces. Mr. Frankel also was on-the-scene commander of the FBI team that investigated bombing of Ruby Club during the World Cup. He also led the team and arrested surviving involved in Massacre, Alabama incident of coast of Somalia. Mr. Frankel has served as a team leader as assistant inspector within the FBI inspection divisions, where he was involved in 2 shootings investigation and 16 inspections. He was assigned to the New York office, where he supervised threat and response squads within the New York City at JFK Airport. Mr. Frankel was also associated division counsel with the New York field office, where he provided legal advice to the FBI employees and investigated administration matters. Mr. Frankel has begun his FBI career as a special agent assigned to the New York field office when the Gabino family organized crime squad. Mr. Frankel is an FBI-trained hostage negotiator, has worked on several kidnapping matters domestically and abroad. Prior to joining the FBI, Mr. Frankel was Assistant Director Attorney to the Suffolk County, New York, where he was responsible prosecuting criminal matters on behalf of the state. Mr. Frankel served 5 months period as the interim SAC in Buffalo Division. In August of 2013, he was promoted to Special Agent in Charge at the FBI Newark's Field Office of Counter-terrorism Division. In December of 2013, Mr. Frankel was named Special Agent in Charge of New York's Field Office of Criminal Division. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Richard M. Frankel.
All right, thank you. I'm not used to standing behind the microphone. Normally I walk around. Oh, no, believe me, this voice, you don't need that. I'll blow your ears out if I have everything. First off, though, I want to thank Rabbi Abe Friedman. A long and storied career that I've had. I am the Forrest Gump of the FBI. I go out, I've seen everything. I get to touch it a little bit, and I move on. And working with you over the years when I've worked both in Brooklyn and in New York City, I want to thank you for that. DA Vance, DA Vance is, and he may take this a little as an offense, but he's my second favorite DA. And the reason I say that is because in the FBI and in law enforcement, we have the term, it's called rabbi, okay? If you're my rabbi, you're my mentor. You've taken care of me. And, even though, DA Vance, we've worked together, we've done terrorism cases, we've done criminal cases, we've collected billions in fines and restitution. Judge Brown from Queens DA, he actually married me. So he truly is my rabbi. If I could just start with, I go back in my history to when did I think about joining the FBI? To be honest, I probably thought about the FBI when I was 5 years old. You have the FBI story, the FBI shows, and it's great to actually reach out and touch your dream. I knew I was never going to be a Yankee. Thank God I am not a Met. But going on, I actually was able to reach that. But one day, I knew that I actually wanted to have the chance to fight terrorism. I was at Sedgwick camps up in Port Jervis, New York. I was one of, at that point probably a few hundred campers, and raid on Entebbe. The hijacking of the plane, the landing of it in Uganda, and the fact that the Israelis, that the Jews, were able to fly thousands of miles and then get all of the victims, all of the hostages back, and do it in such a courageous and previously unheard of method. It made me feel good. It made me think of, hey, that would be great if I could at least somehow do something like that later in my career. And I'll get back to that, at the end of my brief talk. Now, I'm going to put my BlackBerry out here, and it's so that I keep my clock going. And the reason I'm doing that is because I was told to talk about myself. And I'm an expert in Richard M. Frankel. I could talk for hours. Last time we went 2 hours. You don't want that to happen. So I'm going to try to be brief in my comments and just talk about, again, how I've been able to touch some of the greatest investigations the FBI has had over the recent years. I started with the Gambinos. I then went and became division counsel in New York, which is basically, the equivalent of like a general counsel. Didn't like it. I didn't join the FBI to work as a general counsel. I joined the FBI to be an agent. And then 9/11 happened. And on 9/11, I became a counterterrorism agent in the FBI. And from that point forward, we started running out on the threats. I was able to go out and actually supervise a threat squad. In 2 years, working with NYPD and all the other task force members, we were able to do 18,000 leads and make sure that the city and the area was safe from terrorism. Now, the JTTF, let me just briefly speak about that. the JTTF started in New York in about 1970. It started because of terrorist activity from Puerto Rican separatists. They were going around the city and they were bombing banks and other locations throughout the city. And you'd have NYPD show up, you'd have FBI show up, and let's just say sometimes we all didn't get along the way we should. And I don't know who came up with it. I believe it was a sergeant from NYPD, but he said, hey, let's get a task force together. We'll take 10 cops, 10 agents, 2 supervisors, sergeant and an FBI supervisor. We'll put that together, and that will be the Joint Terrorism Task Force. It was modeled after the bank robbery task force that had started a year before. Well, today, there are now over 100 Joint Terrorism Task Forces around the country. And here in New York, there are over 50 agencies on the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And there are over 400 members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, again, here in the New York area. The New York area JTTF is the oldest, it is the biggest, and it is the best, okay? And you should be very happy for the work that they do at this time. They will not stop in their investigations. They are tenacious. They work with NYPD, they work with the DA's office, with the federal prosecutors, with all the small county prosecutors and county police throughout the area, and they do a wonderful job. And again, they will continue on. So a little bit about some of the cases I've been able to work, starting with the 4 individuals who attempted to blow up the synagogues in the Bronx, and then shoot down a plane in Stewart Air Force Base. All I'll say about that is those 4 individuals, you know, I've heard, you know, I actually saw the HBO special on it regarding, you know, whether they wanted to, whether they were entrapped. I can tell you for a fact that these individuals, they were recruited by the first individual. They wanted to blow up the synagogues. They took 2 devices that we had actually made ourselves to make it look like they were IED, or actually just IEDs. And they took those devices and they put them in front of the synagogues, and then they went back to a car and they coded in the code that would activate that device, and they pushed the button to activate those devices. When that happened, NYPD, ESU took them down. There is no doubt that their plan was to blow up the synagogues and then leave there, go up and shoot down a plane of US soldiers who were going to be on their way to Afghanistan. So that was the first case I was lucky enough to be associated with. Faisal Shahzad, I'm sorry, the Times Square bombers, Najibul Azazi. Those are, you know, up until that point, they had been under the radar here in New York. It was a group of second generation Afghanis living in Queens. You know, up until that point, no one suspected that there were any terrorist underlying intent. But at one point, we did get information that they did want to blow up the subways in New York, and we were able to get first Najibul Azazi. We were then going after the other 2 individuals. It was 3 individuals. The other person, the number 2 was Agudath Medujanin, who's a Albanian Muslim. And, you know, he did not look like the Muslims we had been used to at that point, or we had investigated. He was not he was not dark-skinned. He was a light-skinned individual. He was not from the Middle East. Again, he was from the Balkans. And so you know, it wasn't somebody who would, at that point, have been on the radar. But because of association with Najibul Azazi, we did actually start investigating him. And at one point, we served a warrant on him. And in the warrant, it said that you are being investigated for terrorism. Well, I happened to be back in my office at that point. You know, this is a daily occurrence, you know, where we're out doing search warrants. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym. I didn't even know that, you know, what was going on. I'm about to go to the gym. One of my agents runs up to me and goes, we have a problem. You know, being on the JTTF, you never want to hear that. We have a problem. So what's the problem? Well, we served the warrant on Agudath, and we left, and we had surveillance squads out in front of his house in the area. Agudath Medujanin came down, ran down the stairs, ran in his car, and took off. And now our surveillance squads are following him through Queens, on Queens Boulevard. Okay, that's not good, all right? We don't know if he's running, we don't know what's going on. So our surveillance teams are following him, and he gets on the Whitestone Expressway, and he's gonna go for the Whitestone Bridge. And now, okay, we're thinking maybe he's gonna run, maybe he's going for the border, we just don't know. Well, I know this through 911 calls, what happened next. So he's driving along on the Whitestone, and he gets on the phone, he calls 911, and he goes, my name is Agudath, my name is Agudath, I love death more than you love life, I love death more than you love life, and then it goes off, silent. I find out from agents, later on, that Agudath crashed his car, and he was trying to commit an act of terrorism. He was trying to cause an explosion and kill people on the Whitestone Expressway. Well, the good thing is that Agudath is not a student of physics. He doesn't understand that when you have a car traveling 55 miles an hour, because of traffic on the Whitestone, and a car comes up behind it and crashes into it at 60 miles an hour, you don't have that big explosion. You have what they call a fender bender. Okay, so the guy stops his car, gets out, you just hit me in the back. Agudath gets out of his car and starts to run over the median. Well, behind him happens to be an off-duty Suffolk County detective. The detective stops him and goes, hey, buddy, come on back. What are you doing? Where are you going? He goes, well, the FBI, they're after me. They think I'm a terrorist. And running down the street are like 10 or 15 FBI agents and detectives. Their badges flying all over, guns out. The Suffolk detective just pulls out his gun, get on the ground, you're under arrest. Okay? Gets him on the ground, puts him under arrest. What can we do? At this point, remember, I don't know that he crashed that car to commit an act of terrorism. We just think he got into a fender bender and maybe he's running. We just don't know what's going on. We don't have a crime. Thank God for the DA's office. We called the DA's office, said, hey, isn't that the leaving the scene of a motor vehicle? And isn't that a crime? Yes. We're able then to arrest him because we had NYPD with us, task force members. We were able to arrest him for a small violation, a misdemeanor, but a criminal infraction. And then we were able to then take him back and then start our interview of Agudath. During the interview, he waived all his rights, and he gave us the entire story, the entire conspiracy of how he and his two other individuals were planning to blow up the subways in New York. And it was all because of our work. Again, the JTTF, working together as one, were able to arrest him, interview him, and get the information out of him, and then we were able to charge him. All three conspirators are doing 30 years at this point in federal prison. So just another great case on the JTTF. Faisal Shahzad, everyone knows the Times Square bomber, okay, where he lit off the, he attempted to light off the bomb. On that one, I'll tell you, that to me, that's a bit of a failure. That's an intelligence failure on behalf of the FBI and, law enforcement, the intelligence community in general. Why? Because he was able to light the fuse, okay? If he's able to light the fuse, the only thing that is good for us, the reason why it didn't go off is because Faisal Shahzad was not a chemist. He didn't understand the difference between manure that can blow up and can cause an explosion, and manure that is just basically manure. And that's why, and we were lucky because of that. So we were able to arrest Faisal Shahzad. He was on a plane. He was trying to get out of the country. He was stopped at the gate. We were able to get him off. Now, people ask us, how are we able to flip a lot of, a lot of people? I told you, Agudath, we interviewed him. He gave up the entire conspiracy. When Faisal Shahzad got off the plane, we brought him into a room. We needed to find out immediately whether there was any threat to the community, whether there were any other bombs that could go off. So they were going to go in under the emergency exception. We were not going to Mirandize him, not going to give him any rights or anything, and it may not be used in court, but we didn't care because the intent then was to stop a possible bombing. So we sent a detective and an agent in. The agent, by the way, was a former Manhattan assistant district attorney, who's now an FBI agent. The two of them went in and began the interview. And I sat down. I figured this is going to be 2-3 hours. They came out 10 minutes later. They said, he did it. He wanted to do it. He'd do it again. He waived his rights, and he's ready to talk to us for as long as we want. You guys are good. The reason why he wanted to, and I don't know if you followed this case at all in court, when we brought him to court after we fully interviewed him over the course of a couple of weeks, he wanted to give his story. A lot of these individuals, both criminals and terrorists, their goal is to put out what they do. They want to let people know, that he wanted to kill people. His intent was to kill women and children in Times Square. And he told the judge when he was being sentenced, if he had the opportunity, he would do it again. Okay, so that was another case that I had the good fortune to work on. And then since then, I've also had the opportunity to work on the bombing in Uganda, the terrorist attack in Uganda, and then the terrorist attack at the Westgate Mall in Kenya. And the Westgate Mall, that probably is the one that has touched me the most. When we went there, there were only 4 Americans who were injured, no U.S. Citizens who were killed. So we went there to assist. We were called by the Kenyans and asked to come in and use our forensic investigative skills to assist them. We went there and we worked on a multi-jurisdictional, multinational task force. We worked with the Germans, with the Israelis, with the Brits, and with the Kenyans. And our goal, the whole goal, was to find out who did this. But what we were able to find out is not only how they did it, not only who did it, but how they did it. And the reason it touched me, I have 5 children. And what I found out was that after they started the attack, and they started the attack in 2 different parts, they started the attack in one part of the mall, and then they moved on to the other part of the mall. They went up to the top, and at the top of the mall, there was a children's cooking contest going on. And without regard for the children, they just started opening fire, and they killed about 40 children. 40 Kenyan children, 40 multinational children. I mean, kids that were either at the, went to the private schools, went to the missionary schools, or were local Kenyans. And they didn't care. They killed anyone. You've heard reports that they picked out Muslims or non-Muslims. That's not the case. Their goal was just to cause terror. They went there and they killed anyone who was in their way. I did see a video, another HBO special. If you see it, it's all the videos, the video feeds. And it's terrible. You see somebody crawling along the ground, not a threat to anyone. He's been injured. And the terrorist comes up and shoots him in the back of the head. Okay, that one truly touched me. But again, working, the FBI, working with all of our partners, working with the Kenyans, we have been able to identify that it was not hundreds of shooters, that there were 4 shooters. We identified that 2 of them are dead. At least we believe all 4 are dead. But we were able to identify the conspiracy and track it back to where it came from. And working with the militaries of all the other governments, some of them have been able to been arrested, and I believe some of them are currently on trial in Kenya at this time. So just another great case. One thing I'd like to talk to you about briefly is criminal matters, because again, now I'm on the criminal side of the house, as Mr. Vance, DA Vance said. The threat to our national security is not just terrorism. It's on the financial side. If somebody is able to attack our financial sector and take down our financial sector, it could ruin the United States of America. We saw what happened a few years ago when the financial sector had the crash, and that was non-nefarious. So imagine what would happen, whether it's through a cyber attack or through what we call a brick and mortar attack, where they go in and they steal money through other frauds or other type of financial schemes. If they're able to take down our financial institutions, it is as great a threat to us as any terrorist attack. And with that, we're working with Mr. Vance's office. The case he talked about, the BNPP case, that was a landmark case where we were able to go after a bank together, a bank that profited off the suffering of all individuals throughout the world. They didn't care who suffered. As long as they were able to make a buck, they continued to give money to those countries. And working with the Manhattan DA's office, working with Treasury, and working with other parts of the federal government, we were able to identify those individuals, identify the bank, identify individuals who were part of the conspiracy, and we're able to hit them where it hurts. And let's face it, a lot of the time, the best place to hit them where it hurts is in their pocketbook. And so an $8.9 billion fine is not a bad day's work. And again, if it hadn't been for the work of the Manhattan DA's office, I don't know if we would have been so successful. So thank you very much, Mr. Vance. And then just going on other cases, I heard once that, working terrorism cases is great. It's great that we do that. But when you talk to people in the community, if you go into the housing projects and people can't come out at night because of the gun violence and the gang violence that's going on in their community, they are fighting their own little areas of terrorism. And so right now we're working with the NYPD in building our task force. In fact, we just enacted a new gang task force, both in Queens and in Manhattan, where we're going to go after the most violent offenders and try to take them off the streets so that people are able to go outside and not worry about, whether there's going to be, a ricochet because two gangbangers are going at it in their neighborhood. This is in my opinion, it is the safest city in America. However, it could be safer. Any day that we lose somebody because of gun violence is a day that I think we have not done everything we can. So we're going to continue working with the task forces to go after those gangbangers. And then, finally on a matter that I don't know if you've heard about, but Director Comey from the FBI has been speaking about this. It's called going dark. Right now, a lot of the cellular companies and a lot of the technical companies have been talking about their privacy rights, which we fully understand. But Google and Apple are now starting to put out encryptions that are going to be so technically savvy that even with a search warrant, we will not be able to go in and listen to those conversations. That will be a problem. We can identify cases where if we were not able to get up on their phones and identify what was being said, that people would be dead right now. There was a prosecutor down in North Carolina whose father was kidnapped because she prosecuted a gang case. They were set to kill her. They were set to kill him. If we had not gotten up on an emergency Title III, a search warrant, Title III warrant, a wiretap, we would not have been able to get that information, and our team would not have been able to save that individual. We know of cases where if this goes through, it would be it would cause havoc for the law enforcement community. So this being a legislative breakfast, I would say that any laws that were enacted to help us with this, that's what we would ask for. And so I thank you for that. Listen, it's been a great career that I've had. You heard me. It was actually, like I said, I'm Forrest Gump. I get to go and see a little bit of everything. But, you talk to my family, you talk to my kids, and you ask them, what's the best case I ever did? Okay? What's the best thing you've ever done? I mean, I've met with the President of the United States. I've gone, to Afghanistan. I've done terrorists here in the United States. I arrested the first pirate in the history of the United States since the 1800s, okay? And they said to me, hey, is that Johnny Depp? I go, no, it's not Johnny Depp. It's not the Pirates of the Caribbean. But this was a great case. We were able to arrest, you guys, you may have seen the movie, Captain Phillips. We were able to go over and arrest the pirate. Now, if you remember the movie, if any of you have seen the movie, you really don't see any FBI agents there, okay? Remember at the end of the movie, when the SEAL is handing the pirate to somebody? That's me. The guy who's not on camera. It was actually Danny DeVito. They didn't want to show him. Danny's my counterpart. And but we were able to go and arrest the pirate on that ship, and that was a great case. So, on behalf of the FBI, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That's good.